Stephen Ridley is an educator, a pianist, and an entrepreneur who sells piano masterclasses and courses through the Ridley Academy. And unlike many pianists that I've reacted to on this channel, Stephen has had his fair share of controversy. And that's because of his links to Scientology, the amount he charges for his courses, and whether he's actually good at the piano. And while there have been many videos made about Stephen claiming that he is a scam, today I'm going to react to his playing and find out if he is good at the piano. So let's get into it.
Lights! My name is Stephen Ridley, and this is the next evolution in piano education. In this course I'm going to take you through, you will learn piano in a way which is simpler, less complicated, and more efficient than any traditional method of piano education. You ready?
It's kind of funny, I'm always very cautious of people who say they're going to teach things in a different way. Usually you do that by showing rather than telling. There is a reason that music is taught in the way it is, and actually most of music learning is quite logical. The idea of scales, chords, note reading, technique, those kind of things, the reason that we learn those things is because that gives you an understanding of how music actually works, so that you can apply that to any piece of music, and you can apply that to your own pieces of music. Usually, when someone says they're going to make it simpler for you, firstly, if you learn in a logical way, music doesn't have to be complicated. But also, it probably means that he's going to miss out on a load of information and just prescribe a way of playing. And I don't think missing out information makes it simpler. I think it just means that you know less. It's a bit like someone teaching you a language and only teaching you very common phrases without really telling you the meaning of those phrases. If you actually want to learn the language, then you're better off learning what words mean, how sentences are structured, those kind of things. It's kind of interesting because most people's complaint about Stephen's playing is that he tends to like bash the piano quite hard and he only has one dynamic. He can only play at one volume, which is the max volume. I think there is a place for playing loud and kind of aggressive like that, but not if it's everything that you play. One of the best ways to show emotion in music is actually to vary the volume. If you only play at one volume, then you're kind of missing out on the ability to do that. And even with pop music, where everything is compressed and it's all at one volume on the track, when those artists play live, it sounds much better because they can vary the dynamics. So instead of this, which is just kind of loud and messy, you could do something like this. Having a more varied texture and pulling away and pushing the volume, it makes the music more three-dimensional and something that you can actually connect with rather than just playing as loud as you can. You see, this is already much better because it's trying to play it in a more emotional way.
Gonna let you go.
I spoke too soon. Yeah, the problem is it sounds really messy. It sounds like it's just going. In In a typical pop song, you normally have a verse-chorus structure, and typically the verse is much less than the chorus, and the chorus is the hook, and it's the thing that's memorable and repeats. And in most genres of music, typically you have the peak of the piece about 2/3 of the way through the piece of music. And this is so that the music has some narrative. It kind of starts in one place, it builds to something, and then at the end you return to where you started. The exact same thing happens in movies and in books. You start in one place, you grow and change over the first 2/3 of the piece of music, and then you return with a different perspective by the time you get to the end.
But I wish we never met at all. My heart's so empty, and I can't find my soul. You know I hate myself, but I love myself too much for this. Just wish I never touched you. I wish I never tasted your lips. So get with my friends, just to show me you can. So get with my friends, yeah, just to show me you can. I will stand.
I also think a large part of why Stephen plays like this is because he doesn't have a lot of things that he can do on the piano. And I am trying to be fair, so I don't want that to come across offensive. In fact, one of the best ways to get good at improvising on the piano is to have kind of a few things that you do on the piano and then expand the catalogue of things that you can do on the piano. So for example, one thing might be to play octaves in the left hand. That might be something that you do in everything that you play, just so that you get really good at that technique. Another thing might be to play this rhythm, for example. But because I think Stephen has a kind of limited way of playing, I think he can't use texture in order to create size or thinness in his music. For example, in order to tell a story with this music, you don't just need to go and then get louder throughout the piece of music. You could thin the texture. And then that can grow into something. And so on. But if you play everything in kind of chord shapes, and if you play everything with octaves in your hand, for example, and you play at the maximum volume that you can play, then every song that you play is going to sound exactly the same and kind of emotionless. And I think Stephen tries to overcompensate his piano playing with his stage presence, so he tries to create the emotion by showing it physically. So instead of really changing the texture and sound that he's playing on the piano in order to make it sound introverted, for example, he will physically just become more introverted and try and sell it through physical performance rather than through the music itself, and then using your physical movement to aid that.
Just to show me you can. So get with my friends, yeah, just to show me you can.
Yeah, so in this section where he has kind of toned it down to just playing the chords once rather than playing the rhythm, the way that he's singing isn't matching the way that he's playing, so therefore it's kind of confusing as to what he's trying to get the audience to feel. If you play a chord like this but then kind of shout the words, for example, what does that mean? Is it a more timid or introverted emotion like the chord suggests? Or is it a more extroverted, aggressive emotion like his singing is suggesting? I think, to be honest, he's playing and singing kind of impulsively, so he's just doing whatever feels right at the time, and that is absolutely fine. The reason I question it is because if he's teaching the piano and he's teaching music, how is he teaching his students these concepts if he doesn't know these or do them himself?
Yeah, and I will let you go.
It's kind of funny because I have a video of me when I was 16 years old playing a blues Christmas song medley, and I did it alongside a teacher of mine, and it sounds exactly like this. At the time when I did that performance, I cared a lot about sounding impressive and playing something that sounded big, because it's easy to think that an audience is impressed by a lot of fast notes played loudly. The problem is one, it only sounds impressive if it's clear, and two, if that is the intention behind the music, it's kind of hollow, because the music is kind of irrelevant. You can play anything fast and loud. The interesting part of music is working out why different pieces sound different and what emotions they convey and why they convey them. And then how do you physically translate that onto the piano? For example, if I played Clair de Lune like this, that was painful to do, but it's fairly obvious that I'm not really thinking about what the music means, or I don't really care about the experience my audience are having. Whereas if I play it like this, I'm thinking about the chords that are being used, whether the notes are rising or falling, and I'm trying to convey the sentiment and the meaning of the piece to an audience member. In this case, that's you. So that's Stephen Ridley's playing, but how does he actually teach the piano?
Next, we're going to look at the Dorian scale. This is a beautiful scale. It kind of sounds like the morning after.
Now, the really interesting thing there is that the Dorian scale is a type of mode, and a mode is a form of scale. And the way that this is typically taught is by using regular major scales. So, for example, a C major scale is the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. In order to play a Dorian scale, we can just play exactly the same scale but starting on a D. So it's kind of like a major scale but offset. So that would be D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, for example. Now, if we want to play the Dorian scale starting on C, for example, then we would actually be playing a B flat scale, but it's C to C. Because we've offset the B flat scale, we're now playing it one step higher. We're playing it starting on a C, which is what makes it Dorian. Now, this is a great piece of information to have because modes all have unique, distinct sounds, as Stephen is saying. The problem is that when he played the Dorian scale, he didn't really play the Dorian scale. The reason for this is because in order to play the Dorian scale, your tonal center has to move. You have to have C as note 1 in the scale, and therefore that needs to feel like home. So if I play a C minor chord, this needs to feel like home. However, when Stephen played, when it finished on a C minor chord, it sounded like it needed to carry on and he needed to finish on a B flat chord because regularly these notes are from a B flat major scale. So at the end, it would have sounded finished had he played this. If you want to play something using a Dorian mode, the chords and melody notes that you choose have to be more carefully chosen so that C is note 1 in the scale. So you might do something like this. This way, the chord that I finished on felt like it was home, but also you get the unique quality of sound that the modal scale gives you.
This looks confusing, but I'm going to make it simple in less than 30 seconds. So, what we're going to do, we're going to focus just on this little bit. All this stuff is just notes. Above it, we have this symbol. Come here. We have this thing right here, right? What does that mean? It's called an octave. An octave comes from the Latin word octava, which means 8. If you count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes that repeat and repeat and repeat, and that's an octave. It's why it's so important, because when we're learning music, we learn everything in one octave. So I could go, and then I'd say, okay, play an octave higher, and I'd just count up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, play an octave higher. Amazing, right? So when we're learning music, we don't have to worry about all these notes. We just focus on 8. And then after that, we can build it up, and that's how we can make music easy. octaves.
Yeah, so actually the information that he's giving here is not bad information. That is an octave symbol, and it does mean, when it's written above the notes in the right hand at least, to play an octave higher, which is 8 notes. So he is actually teaching something valuable here. The problem I have with this is the very first sentence.
This looks confusing, but I'm going to make it simple in less than 30 seconds. So,
firstly, it can look confusing if there are things on the page that you do not understand. However, explaining the octave symbol doesn't make any of what is just pointed at any simpler in 30 seconds. Although in my videos, I try and give as much information as possible without making it confusing. And I know a lot of other pianists on YouTube do the same. You've got to be careful not to tell people that you can give them shortcuts or make massive claims that you can do something that other piano teachers can't. Every pianist has exactly the same information. Some players will have different methods to teaching that than others, and some will use different metaphors, for example, and that way of teaching will click with some players and not others. But if you want to learn to read music, for example, then there is no other way of doing it than learning what the notes and symbols are and then doing it a lot. But there are different methods for learning what those notes are and remembering them.
major versus minor. What do they mean and who's going to win? Let's find out. I'm going to tell you how to see the difference between major and minor in less than 60 seconds for the rest of your life. So, all you're going to need to know is this. Major describes a bunch of notes that sound happy. Great. Minor describes a bunch of notes that sound sad. Now I'm going to play a song with 4 chords and you're going to tell me which are major and which are minor. You ready?
Now, there is a little bit of a problem with this as well, and I know a lot of people describe major as happy and minor as sad, and that is true in certain contexts. However, minor can mean more than just sad. It could be aggressive, for example. That was a minor chord, but it didn't sound sad in any way. And this is major. But that doesn't sound happy in any way. If anything, it sounds more longing or contemplative. So the way I like to refer to the difference between major and minor chords is to think of it as 2 polarized feelings. Positive emotions being major, and you have negative emotions being minor. Because negative emotions, for example, encompasses more than just sad. It can be angry, it can be aggressive, it can be sorrowful, it could be frustrated, it could be fearful. And the positive emotions could be happy, but it also could be excited or triumphant or something like that. And I think the example that he gave at the end doesn't make it massively clear which one is major and which one is minor based on whether it's happy or sad. The best way to actually learn to be able to hear the difference between major and minor chords, and any other types of chords for that matter, is to play them and compare the quality of sound to each other. So this is a major chord, and this is a minor chord. And then this is a major chord, and this is a minor chord. The more times you hear those types of chords and the qualities, you'll be able to recognize them in songs and pieces of music. And actually, when reading or learning a piece of music, I would do it the other way around. So recognize the chord first and work out what that tells us about the emotion, rather than working out the emotion first and therefore what the chord is. Because a major chord can mean more than just happy. And what the positive emotion is largely depends on what the context is. Is it slow? Is it soft rather than loud? Is it thick textured? Is it thin textured? All of those elements played with a major chord is going to sound very different to a different set of elements. So to me, Stephen is very interesting, and I have tried to be as fair as I possibly can. One of the biggest problems that I think Stephen has is the fact that he tries to make grandiose claims that he's going to be able to simplify music and teach you in a way that no one has ever taught music before, and that you can become a concert pianist by practicing 5 minutes a day for 1 month. Firstly, that isn't the case, nor should it be the case, because every single piece of music you ever learn will take time to learn, and you'll learn something new from every piece. But secondly, even if that was the case, that you could learn the piano in 5 minutes a day for 30 days, I don't think Stephen really has the knowledge to teach that. I actually think he can play the piano, and he can play the piano in a very specific way. He's obviously spent a lot of time playing chords and vamping on the piano, kind of taking the chords from a song and messing around with them on the piano so that he can sing along with them. And there are a lot of musicians out there that have learned in exactly the same way. When I first started playing, I also learned in that exact same way. But I actually think his knowledge in music is limited to chords and a few different scales. And for those people that only want to learn chords and a few different scales, you can get that for free on the internet rather than paying $3,000 for a teacher that's probably quite limited in what they know, or at least what he does in his playing himself and what he teaches. If you want to see my reaction to Narsol, who is a very credible pianist, then head on through, and I will see you there.